December the 19th, 2004, a famous banker, Yerzhan Tatishev, died while hunting. In the vehicle, he was accompanied by his bodyguard, Sergei Kozlykin, captain of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the Republic of Kazakhstan and graduate of the FSB Academy of the Russian Federation, as well as his close friend, a famous businessman, Muratkhan Tokmadi. The other two bodyguards, Akhmetullah and Kalin, followed them in the second vehicle. On the eve of that fateful day, Yerzhan had called Muratkhan several times, insisting he went hunting with him. Initially, Muratkhan had refused due to bad weather. The wet snow that fell on that day would cover animal tracks, yet Yerzhan had managed to convince Muratkhan to go. They left early in the morning and started chasing the wolves in the vicinity of the Otar railway station. During the first follow-up interrogation, Kozlykin will confirm. We were going pretty fast. The SUV bumped hard along the rough road 2-3 times. I heard a shot from the left side. The car began stopping. I turned back and saw Muratkhan. I can't say for sure where the weapon was exactly. At that moment, Muratkhan was sitting down. Later on, Kozlykin will alter his testimony. In the meantime, the SUV comes to a halt, and they realize that Yerzhan has just died from the buckshot that hit him in the head from behind. 3 years of investigation and court hearings led to 2 acquittals that entered into legal force in the appeals instance. Both were based on the conclusions of several experts. That is, that when hitting a hard surface, a Zaur gun may fire without pressing the trigger. The moment of the shot coincided with the SUV hitting a bump, as a result of which the gun could hit something and incidentally fire on its own. The second acquittal contained not just a verdict to acquit Mr. Tokmadi due to the lack of corpus delicti in his actions as per Article 101 of the Criminal Code of the Republic of Kazakhstan in causing involuntary slaughter of Mr. Tatishev, but also a special court order against bodyguard Kozlykin, specifically investigating his potential involvement in the crime.
However, not only that was not done. Contrary to the law on the inadmissibility of small gravity case review and Article 77 of the Constitution of the Republic of Kazakhstan, no one shall be subject to criminal prosecution for the same offense. The then chairperson of Zhambul Regional Court, Eduard Yobov, had once again referred the case of causing death by negligence to Yerzhan Tatishev to Taras City Court that sentenced Muratkhan Tokmadi to 1-year probation, applying amnesty.
Прошло
13 years have passed since that time. Muratkhan Tokmadi is building the country's largest industrial glass processing plants, Kazstroy Stiklo, that have glazed the country's most important facilities, including Expo, and that have won many awards, including the first Altin Sapa Prize as the best manufacturing enterprise in Kazakhstan. He is awarded orders and medals by presidential decrees. His partner, Mr. Sergei Nepropekin, leaves the project early on, selling his share to Muratkhan due to the need to pay off debts at his previous place of work, Almaty Gorstroy, as well as before other creditors. He nonetheless continues collaborating with the company during 2005 and 2017 right up to the arrest, placing $1 million purchase orders at Muratkhan's factories and maintaining friendly relations. The €4,200,000 loan from the BTA Bank to launch the project issued under Yerzhan Tatishev was repaid through refinancing at the Forte Bank and completely closed later. Happy marriage. 5 children growing up. Nobody was expecting a group of special officers in masks breaking into this world on the early morning of June the 12th, 2017. The Interdepartmental Investigation and Operations Group of the KNB, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and the Prosecutor General's Office, headed by Begjan Yurmukanbetali, Assistant Prosecutor of Kostanay Region, arrests Murathan at home in front of his wife and 10-year-old daughter, stricken with terror. He is charged with extorting a share from his former partner and friend, Sergei Nepropekin, 12 years ago, as per his corresponding application to Masimov. Muratkhan is taken out with a bag on his head as a particularly dangerous criminal and taken to the building of the National Security Committee, or the KNB. Simultaneously, raids and searches are taking place in the homes of older children and relatives, at factories in Almaty and Astana, executed by over 200 officers of the Prosecutor General's Office, KNB, and Aristan Special Task Force. Even lawyers are not allowed to see his wife, Jamila. In the basement and in the backyard of their house, the officers suddenly find a pistol and live ammunition. Everything happening gets coverage on all TV channels of the country. The arrest of the businessman Muratkhan Tokmadi at the request of his former partner gets presented as the capture of a particularly dangerous criminal group. It was then that it became clear the true reason for all the ski-masked raids by the law enforcement was different. By that time, the political situation in the country was such that the entire opposition and any disagreement with the rule of President Nazarbayev were suppressed, with a well-known businessman and former Minister of Energy Mukhtar Ablyazov remaining the only unbroken and strongest opponent. He owned many assets in Kazakhstan and was considered one of the most influential and reputable businessmen in the country. Yet, after establishing the opposition party, Democratic Choice of Kazakhstan, and direct criticism of Nazarbayev's regime, he was arrested, tortured, and convicted, then pardoned and left for Moscow. Immediately after the arrest in the KNB pretrial detention center, Bekjan Yermukanbetali, head of the Interdepartmental Investigation and Operations Group, jointly with Ruslan Iskakov, KNB colonel, and as it turned out, the behind-the-scenes supervisor of the entire operation, started forcing Muratkhan to self-incriminate. "We don't need you, not to mention Nepropekin. We want Ablyazov. Help your motherland. Confess of the alleged contract murder of Yerzhan Tatishev, ordered by Mukhtar Ablyazov. Otherwise, we'll roll you under the asphalt and butcher everyone in your family down to the 7th generation." After Muratkhan's refusal to take on a terrible crime, the murder of a close friend, they began torturing him. In parallel, pressure was exerted over all family members and close friends. After the criminal case on illegal possession of weapons, Jamila, Muratkhan's wife, with 2 minor children and without any financial support due to the arrest of all accounts and property, fled to Europe. There, she turned for assistance to human rights organizations, spoken at the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and the OSCE.
As the result, the PACE issued the declaration demanding that the leadership of Kazakhstan release political prisoners, including Muratkhan Tokmadi, and stop persecuting their family members.
By that time, it became clear to the entire world. Muratkhan's arrest was yet another attempt to extradite Mukhtar Ablyazov to his homeland.
After starting the struggle for her husband, 2 more criminal cases were opened against Jamila for illegal border crossing and perjury. Allegedly, everything that she had stated about Muratkhan's torture in the KNB pretrial detention center was a lie, because he had simply fallen off the horizontal bar while exercising.
Muratkhan, who had been left without a single lawyer by that time, since they were all removed from the case, receives a message from Iskakov. Jamila has left you. She will be extradited, convicted under 3 articles, and imprisoned for 15 years. Your children will go to an orphanage. He shows Muratkhan videos and photos of his wife and children abroad as an evidence of spying on them. Of course, after the threat against his family and several months of torture, Muratkhan finally signs the procedural agreement on cooperation, subject to the cessation of the persecution against them. Subject to the cessation of persecution against the family. Immediately after that, orders are issued to terminate criminal cases against Jamila. According to the signed procedural agreement, the Prosecutor General's office, represented by Jambul Regional Prosecutor's Office, which was already illegal, took on the obligation to convict Muratkhan to a term below the lowest limit for the type of crime.
However, in March 2018, Jambul Regional Court sentenced Muratkhan to 10.5-year imprisonment, cumulatively under the alleged extortion case and contract murder case. That meant that the court openly went for formal forgery and, violating the signed procedural agreement, convicted him to a term exceeding the one promised, since, as per Article 96, Part 2, Clause G, the lowest limit for that crime was only 10 years of imprisonment.
After the trial on March the 16th, 2018, he gets walled up in a solitary confinement cell of the KNB Pretrial Detention Center and then Pretrial Detention Center number 18, where he will be illegally detained for over 3 years and 3 months. Yet, despite complete isolation, Muratkhan continues to fight, for which he is subjected to new beatings, once by 10 border guards of the KNB subdivision guarding detention center number 18 under the supervision of Kamit Abugani, KNB captain, who was later convicted of torturing other prisoners. Yermukan Betuli and Iskakov coerce him to confess in front of foreign partners from the FBI, forcing him to learn the text of the confession by heart under torture and beatings. After that, obviously the orchestrators and executors of the operation clearly see it that there is not a single objective evidence of Muratkhan's guilt in contract murder except for a confession knocked out under torture. Even the assessment by the US experts initiated by Yerkin Tatishev was carried out with gross violations. Muratkhan did not participate in the investigation experiment, as he was allegedly unavailable although he was kept in the KNB detention center. He was executed not at the scene of the tragedy, that is, in deserted steppe with pits and potholes. It was done in static, in the courtyard of the KNB building, and not in dynamics, and without modeling cross-country driving at the speed of 90 kilometers per hour, as it was on that fatal hunt. In November 2018, the same Jambul court sentenced Mukhtar Ablazov as the alleged customer of Yerjan Tatishev's murder to life imprisonment. To help the Kazakh authorities extradite Ablazov, Yerkin Tatishev files a complaint in France against Ablazov based on the fabricated evidence, accusing him of the alleged serious criminal offense. However, the court in France rejects Tatishev's complaint and remains adamant in its conclusion. The persecution of Ablazov by the Kazakh authorities is politically motivated. After the apparent failure of the entire operation, Iskakov decides to send Muratkhan as a dangerous and unpredictable witness to one of the most terrible closed prisons in the country, Zhezkazgan, popularly known as Kazakhstan's Guantanamo. There, in a solitary confinement cell measuring 5 square meters, Muratkhan is again subjected to torture and bullying, as well as deprivation of basic prisoner rights. Walks and weekly shower, not to mention inmate correspondence, calls, and visits by family members, which he has not had for over 5 years.
It was only after the events of the Bloody January in 2022, when Karim Masimov and Ruslan Iskakov were arrested and convicted of high treason as the main organizers of the events, that the lawyer was allowed to see Muratkhan and get access to the case file, as well as Murathan's wife was allowed to visit him in prison for the first time in many years. As the result of seeing his lawyer, Murathan wrote an open letter to the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Mr. Tokayev, in which, for the first time, he was able to tell everything about the 5 years of his imprisonment. That letter was referred to the General Prosecutor's Office, and that led to the opening of a criminal case on the fact of torture.
In June 2022, the Anti-Corruption Service of the Republic of Kazakhstan registers a criminal case on the fact of torture of Muratkhan Tokmadi by the staff of the National Security Committee and Institution number 62 of Zhezkazgan city. However, the case gets closed due to the lack of corpus delicti, then resumed, then closed again, and later once again initiated by the General Prosecutor's Office, and then closed again, despite the conclusions of an independent forensic medical examination that directly confirmed the presence of rib fractures as a result of punches with a blunt instrument. And likewise, despite the testimony of a witness, Bakijan Dusupov, one of the members of the Interdepartmental Investigation and Operations Group, who, on the order of Iskakov, secretly filmed all the tortures of Muratkhan and then, after trying to publish them, was arrested and served prison time for disclosing state secrets. The struggle for Muratkhan's freedom and restoration of justice continued. Repeated attempts were made to compel the Prosecutor General's office to comply with its obligations under the procedural agreement. Eventually, after 4 letters from Jamila Tokmadi to the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan and numerous complaints, only in April 2021, at the request of the Prosecutor General's office, the term of 10.5 years was reduced by only 6 months. That is, down to 10 years of imprisonment.
We have submitted several appeals for legal parole. The last time it was in June 2024. Konaev City Court has finally granted the petition, but then Yurkin Tatishev has intervened once again.
Konaev City Court not only accepted the Tatishev's complaint, despite the fact that it was filed after the decision on parole entered into legal force, that was confirmed by the fact that they immediately withdrew it, but referred the case for appeal, thereby questioning its own court ruling. Prior to the start of the first appeal session, the harmed party launched a large-scale media campaign, including attracting blogger lawyers, affiliated journalists, and famous people. Yurkin Tatishev even turned to the president and held a press conference right on the eve of the appeal session with the participation of the same U.S. expert, Louis Freeh, the former FBI director who has previously conducted the unlawful investigation experiment without the engagement of the main person involved, Muratkhan Tokmadi. Tokmadi's parole appeal was delayed several times and included several sessions broadly covered by domestic media. As the result, Konaev Regional Court denied Muratkhan a legal parole due to the phone allegedly found on him the day before. In reality, there was no legitimate investigation or even video evidence associated with that. Nevertheless, Muratkhan Tokmadi was not only once again deprived of the right to legal parole, but also placed in the strict regime barracks, zeroing the degree of behavior that made it impossible for him to apply for another parole for at least a year. The subsequent attempt by the security officials to extradite opposition leader Mukhtar Ablazov to his homeland has ended in another failure. In the spring of 2025, the French Court of Appeal for the second time refused to extradite him to Kazakhstan. This confrontation has been going on for over 10 years. Huge state resources were spent to capture Ablazov in order to silence him, with hundreds of people and their families becoming victims of this standoff. Among them is Muratkhan Tokmadi, who has spent over 8 years in captivity for the crime he didn't commit. His 5 children have already grown up, 4 grandchildren were born, and only recently they were able to see their grandfather for the first time. The Tokmadi family continues to fight for his freedom and for restoring justice. In July of this year, the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe issued another declaration signed by its 20 members, once again demanding the leadership of Kazakhstan to release Muratkhan. Many people who had partaken in this unprecedented, fabricated case against Mr. Tokmadi are still working in the security forces and enjoying prominence in our society. With all their might, they continue preventing Muratkhan gaining the long-awaited freedom. Yet, the truth will inevitably triumph in the end.